It was just after 1 in the morning when I heard someone whispering outside my bedroom door. At first, I thought it was my daughter getting up to use the bathroom. But then I heard the words. "Your husband looks at me the way he looks at you." I sat up fast, heart racing. I opened the door, and there she was, my daughter's friend, Jazz, 13 years old, shaking, eyes red and swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. She was holding something out to me, my husband's phone. I blinked, confused. "Jazz, what do you mean?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, her lower lip trembling. Then she whispered, "I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry." And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life started to crack. My name is Elena Monroe. I'm 38 years old, a mother of 2, and for most of the past 13 years, I believed I had a good life. Not perfect, but steady. Safe. The kind of life that makes you feel like you're doing something right, even when it's hard. My husband, Grayson, is a senior software engineer at a large tech firm. He works long hours, but he always made time for our family, or at least he made it seem that way. He brought flowers home when he traveled. He coached our son's soccer team for 1 season, even though he hates sports. He was present at school plays and parent-teacher meetings. People in the neighborhood would say things like, "You're lucky, Elena. Grayson's one of the good ones." And for a long time, I agreed with them. We live in a quiet suburb in North Carolina, in a 2-story house with a white fence, a yellow front door, and flower beds I keep trying to maintain. It's the kind of place where kids ride bikes to the park and people wave when they drive by. I bake banana bread for new neighbors. I run the parent volunteer board at my daughter's middle school. From the outside, we probably looked like a picture-perfect family. My daughter, Lila, is 12, bright, gentle, artistic. She has her father's eyes and my stubbornness. She spends hours painting on her bedroom floor, always losing track of time. This year, she started middle school, and like most girls that age, she's been figuring out where she fits in. A few months ago, she made a new friend, Jazz Fields. Jazz transferred in during the spring semester. She's quiet, a little reserved, with big brown eyes that always seem like they're watching more than she says. Lila took to her quickly. They bonded over art and anime, and soon Jazz started spending more time at our house after school. She'd come over for dinner, sometimes do her homework at our kitchen island while I cooked. She always said thank you, always offered to help with dishes. I liked having her around. She was polite, low maintenance, and I could tell she needed the warmth. There was something about her, like she was used to staying out of the way. It made me want to wrap her in the safety I thought our home provided. Her mom, Darlene, worked 2 jobs and seemed grateful that Jazz had a place where she could relax. We had a few conversations during pickup. She once said, "Jazz feels more herself around Lila. Thanks for giving her that." I didn't think much of it at the time, other than being glad my daughter was kind enough to be a good friend. A few weekends ago, Lila asked if Jazz could sleep over. It was a Friday night, the end of a long week, and I was exhausted. But I said yes. I made pizza from scratch. The girls picked out movies and covered the living room floor in blankets and pillows. They giggled, snuck extra cookies when they thought I wasn't looking, and painted their nails a deep blue that stained one of my towels. Grayson came home late that evening. He walked through the door with his usual smile and some takeout soup for me because I had mentioned at lunch that I felt a cold coming on. He kissed my cheek, joked with the girls, then disappeared upstairs to take a shower. I remember feeling grateful in that moment. Not every dad would be that thoughtful. Not every husband listens when you mention something small. Later that night, Lila and Jazz set up their sleepover in Lila's room. I told them to keep the noise down and kiss my daughter goodnight. Grayson and I got into bed like any other night. We talked about weekend plans. He rubbed my back while I read. I remember thinking we were in a good place. Not perfect, but real. Comfortable. Nothing about that night gave me a reason to worry. Nothing felt off. But looking back now, I see the signs I missed. The way Jazz's smile never quite reached her eyes. The way she sometimes got quiet when Grayson walked into the room. The way she always made sure to sit on the far end of the couch, away from him. I brushed it off as shyness. I told myself she was just adjusting to a new environment. I had no reason to question anything. I trusted the people under my roof. I believed I was doing everything right. I gave my daughter a safe home, opened my door to her friends, supported my husband, and built a life around love, respect, and routine. That's what makes what happened next so hard to explain. Because I wasn't looking for secrets. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't preparing for my world to split open in the middle of the night. I thought I was protecting my daughter. I didn't know I'd be protecting someone else's too. I was half asleep when I heard the whisper. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard it again, soft and trembling, coming from the hallway just outside our bedroom. "Your husband looks at me the way he looks at you." I sat up instantly, every nerve in my body suddenly awake. I turned toward the door, confused and alert. I opened it slowly, and there she was, Jazz, standing barefoot in her pajama pants, an oversized sweatshirt, clutching a phone to her chest. She looked like she had been crying. Her face was blotchy, her eyes swollen. She didn't say anything else. She just held the phone out to me like she was handing over something too heavy to carry on her own. I stepped into the hallway and gently took the phone from her. It was Grayson's. For a second, I thought maybe she had found something embarrassing, maybe a meme or a message he forgot to delete, something awkward but harmless. "Jazz," I whispered, trying to keep my voice calm, "what are you talking about?" She stared at the floor. Her hands were shaking. "I didn't want to say anything," she said. "I thought maybe I was wrong, but then he messaged me again tonight. I didn't know what to do. I'm scared." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, he messaged you? Like on social media?" She nodded. "From another account. A different name. I figured it out because he sent me a photo once, and I recognized your kitchen in the background." She took a breath, trying to keep it together, but her voice cracked. "He tells me I'm pretty, that I'm special. He said not to tell anyone, that you wouldn't understand." I felt the phone in my hand like it had turned to ice. I unlocked it with Grayson's fingerprint. He had fallen asleep in bed just minutes before and started swiping through his apps. Everything looked normal at first. Texts, work emails, his regular Instagram account, nothing suspicious. Then I found the app. It was buried in a folder labeled Productivity, next to a calculator and a budgeting tool. It was a private messaging app. I didn't even know he had it. I opened it and found the hidden account. There were dozens of messages, some deleted, some still sitting there waiting to be read again. Compliments, emojis, comments about how grown up she looked, late-night messages asking if she was awake, a photo of her at our dinner table that I had taken on my phone and sent to him weeks ago. He had saved it and sent it to her later, with a caption that made my skin crawl. "You looked really beautiful that night." I couldn't breathe. Jazz was still standing there, silent. She looked terrified, like she expected me to yell or accuse her. Instead, I knelt down and pulled her into a hug. "I believe you," I said. "You did the right thing telling me." She started sobbing. Her entire body shook as she cried into my shoulder. I held her tighter and promised her she was safe. Inside our bedroom, Grayson slept like nothing had happened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes everything feel wrong. I walked Jazz back to Lila's room and helped her into bed. Lila was still asleep, her face peaceful and unbothered by the storm that was building just one room away. I didn't want to wake her. I didn't want to take away the last few hours she had of believing everything was normal. Once Jazz was tucked in, I went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table. I opened the app again and started taking screenshots, message after message. I emailed them to myself. I backed them up. I read through every single one. Some of them went back months. He had been talking to her when she first started coming over. He had watched her eat dinner at our table, complimented her drawings, and then waited until night to become someone else, a predator. I stayed at that table for hours. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I didn't throw his phone across the room even though I wanted to. I planned. I organized every piece of evidence. I made a list of people I needed to talk to. I called Jazz's mom and asked if we could speak privately in the morning. She said yes without asking why. By the time the sun started to rise, I wasn't the same person who had gone to bed the night before. I was a mother on high alert, a woman holding the truth in her hands, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. By morning, I had already made up my mind. There was no part of me that wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I had seen the messages with my own eyes. I had heard the fear in Jazz's voice. I knew what he had done, and I knew what kind of man I had been living with. I didn't need to dig deeper. I didn't want to hear any excuses, but I also knew I couldn't explode. Not yet. Lila didn't know. Jazz was fragile, and Grayson was still pretending everything was fine. When I walked back into our bedroom, he was just waking up. He stretched, yawned, and reached for his phone. I had already returned it to the nightstand. "Morning," he said, rubbing his eyes. "You sleep okay?" I nodded. "Lila's alarm's about to go off. I'll make breakfast." I said it like it was any other Saturday morning, even though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't trust myself to speak more than that. I was afraid that if I said one wrong word, it would all come spilling out in a scream. I went downstairs and started cooking. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed things to look normal for the girls. Lila came down first, still half asleep, dragging her blanket behind her. Jazz followed quietly a few minutes later. She looked like she hadn't slept much, but she kept her eyes on me and stayed close. I poured her a glass of orange juice and told her I had already spoken to her mom, that we'd go over there after breakfast. She nodded. I didn't need to say anything else. Grayson came down last, wearing sweatpants and humming like he had no idea the ground beneath his feet had already cracked open. He kissed me on the cheek. I flinched. "Everything okay?" he asked, studying my face. I turned toward the stove. "We'll talk after breakfast." He looked at me for a long second, probably sensing something was off, but he didn't push. We all ate at the kitchen table. Lila and Jazz giggled over something they saw on YouTube. I smiled at them, but my insides felt like they were on fire. I kept glancing at Jazz, making sure she was okay, watching her body language, watching how she avoided Grayson's eyes. After the dishes were cleared and Lila went up to her room, I told Grayson I needed to talk to him in the office. He followed me in. I closed the door behind us and sat across from him at the desk. "I know," I said. His forehead creased. "Know what?" I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I had saved. One by one, I flipped through them without saying a word. His face changed slowly. Confusion, realization, panic. He tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "Don't." "Not yet." He sat back in the chair, his jaw clenched. "You went through my phone?" he asked, as if that was the crime here. I ignored the question. "You messaged a 13-year-old girl. You called her pretty. You told her to keep secrets. You sent her things you had no business sending. Don't insult me by pretending this is some misunderstanding." His hands were shaking now. He tried again. "She misunderstood. That girl is different. You know she's sensitive. Maybe she's looking for attention." I slammed the desk with my palm. "Don't you dare blame her." His mouth opened, but I could see he didn't know where to go next. He wasn't used to me being this direct. He wasn't used to being cornered. I leaned forward. "You need to leave now before I call the police." That's when the panic turned real. He stood up, his voice getting louder. "Elena, think about what you're doing. This could destroy everything." I stood too. "You already destroyed everything. I'm just cleaning it up." He left the house that day with nothing but a gym bag and a phone I made sure had no trace of anything left on it. I called the police an hour later and filed a report. I gave them everything. Screenshots, voice recordings, time-stamped messages. I called Jazz's mother, Darlene, and told her the truth. She cried on the phone. I cried too. Then I got in the car and drove Jazz home. When I came back, Lila asked where Daddy had gone. I told her he had done something very wrong and that I was going to keep her safe. She didn't understand it all, but she nodded. That night, I slept next to her on the floor of her room, curled in a sleeping bag, holding her hand. I knew what came next would be hard. Police, lawyers, questions, judgments. But I had already made the decision. I was going to protect my daughter. I was going to protect Jazz. I was going to make sure the man I once called my husband could never hurt anyone else again. The police came that same afternoon. 2 officers knocked on the door while Lila was at a neighbor's house. I had asked our next-door friend, Renee, to take her for a few hours. I didn't explain much, only said we were dealing with something serious and I needed help. Renee didn't ask questions. She just nodded and opened her door. When I led the officers inside, my hands were steady. I had already printed copies of every message, every photo, every timestamp. I gave them a folder, organized and labeled. I handed over the phone Jazz had used to show me everything, along with a flash drive where I saved the recordings. They sat at our dining table, flipping through pages, asking quiet questions. I answered everything calmly. I told them about the sleepover, Jazz's confession, the burner account, the patterns I now saw when I looked back. They didn't interrupt. They took notes. They took me seriously. One officer nodded toward the back hallway. "Is he here now?" "No," I said. "I told him to leave this morning. I haven't heard from him since." They asked where he might have gone. I gave them his mother's address, the name of his company, and the contact information for his supervisor. I told them about his travel habits, his password habits, everything I could think of. I wasn't holding anything back. That night, Grayson was arrested at his mother's house. They found him pacing in the driveway when they arrived. According to the officer who called me later, he didn't resist. He didn't ask why. He already knew. The next few days moved fast. The case was assigned. Jazz and her mother spoke with child advocacy counselors. There were interviews, depositions, and forensic scans of the devices he had access to. What they found was worse than I had imagined. He had contacted other girls. Most were older teens, but a few were younger. Some ignored him. Some didn't respond. Some flirted back, not realizing they were talking to a married man with children, using a fake name and hiding behind compliments and jokes. He'd been doing this for a while. I learned that my home, the one I worked so hard to keep warm and safe, had been part of his pattern. He didn't just betray me. He used our family as a mask. He wore his Father of the Year costume while grooming a child under our roof. There was a court date. I sat in the back, hands clenched, while Jazz bravely read a short statement with her mother at her side. She spoke in a clear voice, one that shook slightly but never broke. "He told me I was mature," she said, "but I am a child, and he is not safe." Grayson didn't look at her. He stared at the table, jaw clenched. No tears, no apologies. When the judge asked if he wanted to speak, he declined. His lawyer made a vague statement about mental health and poor judgment. I felt sick listening to it. He was denied bail. The charges were serious and included online solicitation of a minor, child endangerment, and unlawful communication with intent to harm. The evidence was too much to ignore. After the hearing, Jazz's mom hugged me so tightly I thought we might both collapse. "You believed her," she whispered. "You didn't brush it off. You acted." I didn't know what to say. I just held her and nodded. The house was quiet that night. Lila knew something big had happened, but I didn't give her the full story. Not yet. I told her dad had hurt someone and that he was going to face the consequences. She asked me if he would come home. "No," I said. "Not anymore." She cried in my lap. I stroked her hair and let her feel what she needed to feel. I didn't try to rush her. I didn't try to make it okay. I just stayed with her, both of us curled up on the couch with a blanket pulled around us. The next morning, I found a note from Jazz tucked under a magnet on our fridge. It was folded like a card. On the front, she had drawn our kitchen with its yellow walls and flowered curtains. Inside, she wrote one sentence in thick black ink. "This is the first place I ever felt safe." I read it twice. Then I sat at the table and cried harder than I had cried through the entire ordeal. Not because I was broken, but because I realized something important. I had stopped something terrible. I had listened. I had acted. I had chosen truth over comfort. I couldn't take back what Grayson had done. I couldn't erase the fear or the damage. But I could be the kind of woman who didn't look away. That realization didn't heal everything, but it gave me something to hold on to. It gave me strength. The days after the court hearing were the hardest, not because of grief, but because of what silence leaves behind. The house didn't sound the same without Grayson's voice. I didn't miss it, but I noticed the space it left behind, the empty chair at the kitchen table, the absence of his keys on the hook by the door, the realization that I had built a life with someone who never really existed. Lila asked fewer questions. She grew quieter, more thoughtful. I didn't pressure her to talk. When she came into my room one night and asked if she could sleep next to me, I didn't hesitate. I moved over and held her until she fell asleep. I whispered a promise into her hair that I would never let anyone hurt her. Word got around our neighborhood. Some people avoided me at the grocery store. Others offered hugs, apologies, awkward half sentences that trailed off. I didn't care about gossip. I cared about making sure Lila was okay. I cared about supporting Jazz and her mother as they picked up their own broken pieces. Jazz started therapy right away. Her counselor said she was strong but traumatized, that what helped most was being believed. Darlene told me that Jazz no longer woke up crying in the middle of the night, that she started drawing again, that she asked if she could still come visit our house. I told her yes. When she returned for the first time, I greeted her at the door with open arms. She stepped into the kitchen, took a long breath, and said, "It still smells like cookies in here." We sat down at the table and drank lemonade. Lila joined us after a while, and the girls picked up right where they left off, talking about school, their favorite shows, and a new art project. Watching them laugh together made something in my chest unclench. It was the first moment that felt genuinely light since that night. I started writing down what happened, not for the internet or the courts, for myself. I wrote everything so I wouldn't forget how fast it all changed, how important it was to listen when something doesn't feel right, how we never really know what people are hiding behind smiles and small talk. I thought a lot about what would have happened if Jazz hadn't spoken up, if she had stayed quiet out of fear or shame, if I had dismissed her, even for a second. I thought about how many times we assume kids are just dramatic or confused, how many signs we overlook because we don't want to believe the truth. One decision changed everything, not just for me, but for her. I used to think my job as a mother was to keep my child safe. That was true, but it wasn't enough. My job is to listen, even when the words are hard to hear, to believe, even when it's painful, to act, even when it costs everything. Grayson is still awaiting sentencing. He's facing serious charges. I will testify when the time comes. I'm not afraid. I'm angry, and I'm ready. I want the court to see the full story, not just the evidence, but the impact, the betrayal, the bravery it took for a child to speak up. In the months since, I've started speaking at school board meetings and parent groups. I talk about digital safety, warning signs, and why we can't afford to wait until something explodes. I've had mothers come up to me in tears. I've had fathers ask how to talk to their daughters about trust and boundaries. Every conversation is one more chance to prevent this from happening again. I don't consider myself brave. I didn't feel brave when I was holding that phone or when I sat in a police station detailing my husband's crimes. I felt heartbroken. But what I learned is that courage doesn't always look like shouting or fighting. Sometimes it looks like staying calm when your world is falling apart. Sometimes it looks like protecting someone else's child the way you'd protect your own. Jazz's drawing still hangs on our fridge. The one with the yellow walls and the smiling woman at the kitchen door. She said it was me. She said I made her feel safe. That's what I carry with me now. Not the fear, not the betrayal, not the pain. I carry the truth that I chose to believe a girl when she needed someone to trust. I carry the knowledge that I did not look away, and I never will. If you're still watching, thank you. This wasn't an easy story to tell, and it's not an easy one to hear, but it's real. And if sharing it helps even one person, one mother, one child, one friend, then it was worth it. If something about this story spoke to you or reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, please share it. Talk about it. Don't be afraid to have the uncomfortable conversations. You never know who might need them. And if you've ever been in a situation where you were scared to speak up, please know this. Your voice matters. Your story matters. You deserve to be safe, and you deserve to be believed. If you found value in this video, give it a like. Leave a comment and share your thoughts or your own experience. I read every single one. And if you want more true stories like this, real, raw, and honest, please subscribe to the channel. There's more to come. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, and never look away.